Wire $800 million tonight and you'll control the future of DeFi, the founders promised. The Arab billionaire reached for his phone. Then a homeless girl said 2 words in perfect Arabic that froze the room. Before we continue, please comment on which city you are watching from. The private dining room on the 2nd floor of Bagatelle, Miami, hummed with the kind of energy that only billion-dollar deals create. It was 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, and Sultan Al Najjar sat at the head of a glass table that probably cost more than most people earned in a year. At 60, he had the kind of presence that made waiters straighten their posture and CEOs check their ties. His white kandura was perfectly pressed, his keffieh held in place with a gold agal that had been in his family for 3 generations. He'd landed at Miami International 2 hours earlier in his Gulfstream G650, the kind of jet that had a bedroom, a shower, and a staff who memorized how he liked his Arabic coffee. Strong, no sugar, served in a porcelain cup that never made noise against the saucer. Sultan's holding company in Abu Dhabi controlled renewable energy projects across 14 countries, algorithmic trading desks that moved markets before most investors finished their morning coffee, and a seed fund with $2.8 billion under management. His name appeared in Gulf business journals the way other people's names appeared on grocery lists, frequently, expected, necessary. He loved deals the way some men loved art. Each investment was a tableau. Each exit, a vindication. But tonight, something felt different. The 2 founders sitting across from him wore the uniform of tech success, expensive minimalism, tailored black shirts with subtle logos, watches that cost $40,000 but looked like they came from a gas station, smiles that had been practiced in front of mirrors and investor pitch competitions. The older one, Marcus Webb, had a British accent that made everything sound more legitimate. The younger one, David Chen, had that Silicon Valley energy that vibrated at a frequency designed to make older investors feel like they were missing something revolutionary. Between them sat a MacBook Pro displaying a deck that looked like it had been designed by a team who understood that rich people responded to specific visual cues, minimalist slides, sans serif fonts, charts that climbed upward like staircases to heaven, screenshots of supposed exchange partnerships with logos so crisp they practically glowed. The pre-sale allocation closes in 48 hours, Marcus said, his voice carrying the practiced urgency of someone who had closed deals in London, Singapore, and Dubai. After that, the strategic whale positions are locked. We're talking about anchor liquidity that will make this the most stable DeFi platform in the ecosystem. Sultan's legal counsel, Ibrahim, sat to his right, his own laptop open, stylus moving across the screen as he took notes that would later become due diligence reports. Ibrahim had been with Sultan for 11 years. He was brilliant, cautious, and expensive. He cleared his throat, a small sound that meant he had questions. David leaned forward before Ibrahim could speak. I know what you're thinking. Why the rush? Why meet in Miami instead of Dubai or Abu Dhabi? His smile widened. Because this is where the exchanges are making decisions. Binance has offices 20 minutes from here. FTX was born in these restaurants. This is the capital of crypto liquidity, and we need commitments tonight to secure our listing positions before competitors lock up the same exchange relationships. Sultan's fingers drummed against the table, a rhythm only he recognized. He'd made his first million at 23 by recognizing patterns in oil futures that others missed. His first billion came from understanding that renewable energy wasn't just good ethics, it was inevitable economics. Every successful investment he'd ever made started with a feeling, not intuition exactly, more like pattern recognition that operated below conscious thought. And right now, that pattern recognition was sending signals he couldn't quite name. The deck flipped to a new slide. Tokenomics and liquidity lock structure. It showed a pie chart with colors that suggested stability and careful planning, 40% locked liquidity, 20% team vesting over 4 years, 15% strategic partners, 10% community incentives, 15% development fund. The liquidity will be locked in a multi-sig wallet, Marcus explained, verified by Certic, audited by BlockSecure. The smart contract has been reviewed by the same team that audited Uniswap v3. Sultan's eyes flicked to Ibrahim, who made another note. The names sounded impressive, but names always sounded impressive when someone was trying to move $800 million in a single wire transfer. The restaurant's sommelier appeared with a bottle of Chateau Margaux 1996. $3,500. Sultan waved it away. He never drank during deals. Alcohol dulled the pattern recognition, made the signals harder to read. Marcus didn't miss a beat. Your commitment of $800 million would give you a controlling position in what we're projecting to be a $5 billion market cap within 12 months. The math is straightforward. 5 times return if we hit conservative estimates. 10 times if adoption accelerates the way our models suggest. David pulled up another slide. Live dashboard, buy orders stacking up in green, community testimonials scrolling past like digital prayer flags, a counter showing time until whitelist closes, 47:23:18. Sultan leaned back in his chair. The leather creaked softly. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Miami's lights sparkled against Biscayne Bay. Yachts bobbed in the marina. Ferraris purred past on Ocean Drive. This was a city built on risk and reward, a city where fortunes appeared overnight and disappeared just as fast. He thought about his reputation. The Gulf press called him the Sultan of Silicon Sands. Forbes had profiled his ability to identify opportunities before they became obvious. His portfolio companies employed 14,000 people across 3 continents. When he made investment decisions, markets noticed. Passing on this deal meant a competitor would swoop in, someone with less caution and more hunger. If the project succeeded, Sultan would spend years explaining why he missed a generational opportunity. His investors would question his judgment. His sons, who were learning the business, would wonder if their father had lost his edge. But wiring $800 million based on 48 hours of due diligence felt like touching a hot stove just to prove you weren't afraid of fire. Ibrahim's stylus stopped moving. That meant he'd found something. His voice was quiet, professional. The audit letter from BlockSecure, I'm not finding this firm in any of the standard registries. And the Certic verification you mentioned. Could we see the actual report, not just the logo? The room's energy shifted, subtle, like air pressure changing before a storm. Marcus's smile never flickered. Of course, we have all documentation. The challenge is that some of these security firms operate under NDAs until official launch. It's standard practice for high-value pre-launch protocols. We can't release certain details until the token goes live, but I assure you everything is verified at the highest level. Sultan's pattern recognition sent another signal, louder this time. In 37 years of making deals, he'd learned that legitimate offers became more transparent under scrutiny, not less. Real audits had report numbers, timestamps, and cryptographic signatures. Real exchange partnerships had documented agreements, not just logos on slides. Real opportunities didn't require decisions in 48 hours unless someone needed to prevent careful thinking. He looked at the MacBook screen showing the live dashboard, the buy orders, the community enthusiasm, the countdown timer. All of it could be created with $5,000 and a decent web developer. He'd seen it before. Different countries, different industries, same theatrical urgency. But what if he was wrong? What if this was real, and his caution cost him the kind of return that defined legacies? His phone sat on the table, dark screen reflecting the restaurant's ambient lighting. One call to his bank in Abu Dhabi would initiate the wire transfer. $800 million would move through SWIFT systems, convert to cryptocurrency, and lock into whatever smart contract these founders had created. By tomorrow morning, he'd either be positioned in the next revolutionary platform, or he'd be explaining to his board why he'd wired nearly $1 billion to an address in the Cayman Islands based on a PowerPoint presentation. Sultan's jaw tightened. His hands, which had signed contracts worth tens of billions, remained still on the table. I need 10 minutes, he said, to review the materials privately with my counsel. David's smile flickered, just for a second. Of course, we'll step out. But Sultan, I need to be honest with you. We have 2 other whale commitments waiting. If you need time to think, I respect that, but the allocation might not be available when you're ready. It was the oldest pressure tactic in the world. Create scarcity. Manufacture urgency. Make the target feel like thinking was the same as losing. Sultan nodded once. The founders stood, gathered their laptop, and walked toward the restaurant's bar area. Their movements were smooth, practiced, They'd done this before. When the door closed, Ibrahim looked up from his screen. His expression said everything his professional courtesy wouldn't allow him to voice out loud. "It's a scam," Ibrahim whispered. "I can't prove it yet, but every instinct I have is screaming." Sultan stared at the closed door, at the empty chairs where men had just promised him control over the future of finance, at his phone, which could send $800 million with a single authenticated message. He'd built his fortune by trusting his pattern recognition, by listening to signals that operated below conscious thought, by understanding that sometimes the most expensive mistakes looked like the most promising opportunities. But he'd also become a billionaire by taking calculated risks that others were too afraid to consider. The crystal decanter on the table caught the light, water that probably cost $50 a bottle. In the bathroom of his penthouse suite at the Satai, there was a marble bathtub that cost $250,000 to install. His Gulfstream sitting at the private terminal had cost $65 million. So all that wealth, all that power, all that success, and he still couldn't answer the only question that mattered, which was he looking at the opportunity of a lifetime or the most expensive mistake he'd ever made? The restaurant's air conditioning hummed, Miami's nightlife pulsed beyond the windows, and somewhere in the building, a 10-year-old girl with an empty stomach and a brilliant mind was about to answer his question. He just didn't know it yet. Maya Carter didn't belong in Bagatelle, Miami. She knew it. The security guard who'd watched her slip through the service entrance during the 9:30 p.m. shift change knew it. The line cooks who sometimes left her a plate of pasta near the back door knew it. But hunger has a way of making you brave. At 10 years old, Maya had been homeless for 11 months, not the kind of homeless that gets featured in news stories about families down on their luck, the kind that makes social workers check boxes labeled high risk and unsuitable placement. She'd been through 3 foster homes in 2 years. Each one had failed in its own specific way. The first family wanted free labor. The second family's boyfriend had hands that wandered. The third family just wanted the monthly check. So Maya had chosen the streets. Dangerous, yes, but predictable. She sat 3 tables away from Sultan's private room, tucked into a corner booth that the staff used for their breaks. Her laptop was a 2015 MacBook Air, with a cracked screen that she'd traded for fixing a cafe owner's payment terminal. The repair took her 20 minutes and earned her 15 years and 2 days of free Wi-Fi. She'd stretched that connection into a week by rotating between 3 different networks she'd figured out how to access. Her jacket had seen better winters. Her jeans had a hole in the left knee that was growing wider every day. Her sneakers were held together with electrical tape and determination, but her hands were steady on the keyboard and her mind was sharp, sharper than most adults who'd had every advantage she'd been denied. Maya's gift wasn't the kind that showed up on school tests. She'd stopped attending school 8 months ago when the system lost track of her between foster placements. Her gift was pattern recognition applied to systems. Code, networks, blockchain, the architecture of how things worked, and more importantly, how they broke. She'd taught herself programming through library computers and free MIT OpenCourseware lectures she'd stream on stolen Wi-Fi. Professor Silvio Macaulay's course on cryptography, Professor Gary Gensler's blockchain lectures, YouTube tutorials on Solidity and smart contract security. She consumed knowledge the way other kids consumed TikTok videos. 3 months ago, she'd built a basic scanner, nothing fancy, just a Python script that could check Ethereum smart contracts for common red flags. She'd uploaded it to GitHub under a username that didn't reveal her age or circumstances. The repo had 28 stars and 0 funding, but it worked. It could detect unlimited mint functions. Identify proxy contracts pointing to unverified implementations. Flag liquidity locks sent to fresh wallets with no transaction history. Spot blacklist functions that could freeze tokens at will. Find ownership controls that could drain funds in seconds. Maya had learned these patterns by studying rug pulls, dozens of them. She'd mapped them out in notebooks she kept in her backpack. Wallet addresses, transaction timings, the specific functions scammers used, the psychological tricks they played on investors hungry for the next big thing. Her hands were calloused from soldering tiny connectors she'd harvested from discarded electronics behind repair shops. She knew which dumpsters had the best components, which library branches had the fastest internet, which restaurants threw away food that was still good. Survival had made her practical. Necessity had made her brilliant. Tonight, her stomach cramped with the specific pain that comes after 2 days without food. She'd had water from a public fountain that morning, a half-eaten sandwich someone had left on a bench yesterday, nothing since. She came to Bagatelle on Tuesday nights because the kitchen staff knew her, and sometimes they'd slip her leftovers through the service entrance. Pasta with marinara, bread that was a day old but still soft, once a full plate of chicken parmesan that had been ordered but never picked up. But tonight, something else had caught her attention. Her laptop showed a Discord feed for a DeFi project that had been hyped all week. The founders had been posting constantly about a Miami whale reveal. Private dinner, strategic allocation, game-changing partnership announcement. Maya had been watching the project for 3 days. Something about it felt wrong. She'd pulled the smart contract address they'd posted in the Discord, ran it through her scanner. The results made her stomach turn, and not just from hunger. Unverified source true owner has mint, unlimited proxy caution, upgrade to function present liquidity, locked at ZXAB DAS def, created 6 days ago, zero history. Multi-sig warning, single EOA control despite claims. It was textbook, a rug pull dressed up in expensive marketing, but the Discord feed showed the founders were here, in this restaurant, right now, meeting with someone they called the Whale, someone preparing to wire 8 figures based on glossy promises and fake audits. Maya closed her eyes. Her stomach cramped again. This wasn't her problem. She'd learned to mind her business. Getting involved in adult situations only brought trouble. Social workers, police, questions she couldn't afford to answer. But $800 million, that was the number floating around the Discord chat. $800 million about to disappear into a scam so obvious her scanner had flagged it in 90 seconds. She thought about the library where she'd learned everything. The free MIT courses that had taught her to see through exactly this kind of fraud. The knowledge that had been given to her freely by professors who believed education should be accessible to everyone. Maybe she owed something back. Maya saved her work, closed her laptop, and stood up. Her legs were shaky from hunger, but her mind was clear. She knew where the private rooms were. She'd cleaned them once in exchange for a meal, and she knew that sometimes doing the right thing mattered more than staying invisible. Maya moved through Bagatelle like a shadow. She'd learned this skill in foster homes where being noticed meant becoming a target. Small steps, eyes down, body language that said, "I'm supposed to be here." Security systems were designed to catch adults who looked suspicious, not children who looked like they belonged to someone. The private dining room was on the second floor. Through the window in the door, she could see them. 2 men in expensive casual wear, a man in a white kandura who radiated authority, another man in a suit taking notes on an iPad. The founders had just stepped out. They stood near the bar, giving their whale time to think. Their body language was confident. They'd done this before. Maya pressed her ear to the door. She could hear the man in the suit speaking quietly in Arabic. "It's a scam. I can't prove it yet, but every instinct I have is screaming." Her heart rate picked up. They suspected. But suspicion wasn't proof. And in 10 minutes, those founders would walk back in with more pressure tactics, more urgency, more carefully crafted lies. She looked down at her laptop. At the scan results still displayed on the cracked screen, at the wallet addresses connected to previous rug pulls, at the evidence that could stop $800 million from disappearing. Her stomach growled, loud enough that a passing waiter glanced her direction. Maya made a decision. She opened her laptop, pulled up her GitHub scanner, and set it to display the key findings. Then she walked toward the bar where the founders stood nursing expensive whiskey and checking their phones. Marcus saw her first. His expression flickered. Confusion, then mild irritation at a child in a space designed for wealthy adults. "Lost, sweetheart?" he asked, his British accent making the dismissal sound polite. David turned, saw her cracked laptop and worn clothes. His eyes moved past her, searching for parents who weren't there. Maya said nothing. She opened her laptop and positioned it so they could see the screen. the scanner results, the wallet connections, the evidence of their scam displayed in clinical detail. Marcus's face went pale. David's smile evaporated. "Who the fuck are you?" David hissed, his Silicon Valley charm collapsing into something uglier. Maya still said nothing. She closed the laptop, turned, and walked toward the private dining room. Behind her, she heard Marcus say, "We need to leave now." But David's voice stopped him. "No, we're so close. Just a kid with some GitHub script. We can handle this." They followed her. Maya reached the door to the private room. Through the window, she could see the man in the Kandura reaching for his phone, making the decision, preparing to wire $800 million based on faith in a system that was about to rob him blind. She turned the handle and walked in. 6 pairs of eyes turned toward her. The man in the Kandura, the man with the iPad, 2 security guards who'd been standing in the corners, and the founders who'd just entered behind her, their faces frozen between confidence and panic. Maya looked directly at Sultan al-Najjar. She saw his confusion, his irritation at the interruption, his hand still on his phone. She took a breath. Then she spoke the words she'd practiced in her head. Not in English, in Arabic, the language she'd taught herself through library podcasts and YouTube channels while learning about Middle Eastern crypto markets. Innaha amaliyat nasb. It's a scam. The room froze. Sultan's hand stopped mid-movement. His dark eyes locked onto this small girl with a cracked laptop and worn clothes who had just spoken his language with surprising clarity. Ibrahim's stylus stopped moving. The security guards stepped forward instinctively. The founders' carefully constructed masks began to crack. Maya's voice was steady despite her empty stomach and racing heart. She switched to English, her words cutting through the stunned silence. The smart contract they showed you is unverified. The multi-sig wallet is controlled by a single address created 6 days ago. The liquidity lock is fake. The audit letter is from a company that doesn't exist. And the dashboard they demonstrated is pulling data from simulated wallets. She set her laptop on the glass table. The scan results glowed on the cracked screen. "I can prove all of it, right now, if you give me 3 minutes. Marcus found his voice first. "This is absurd. Security, please remove this child before—" "Wait." Sultan's voice cut through the room like a blade. His eyes never left Maya. "How did you know I speak Arabic?" Maya met his gaze. "Your kandura, your kefia, the way you hold yourself, and I heard you through the door." "You were listening?" Ibrahim asked, his professional caution warring with curiosity. "I was trying to decide if I should get involved." Maya's stomach cramped again. She pressed a hand against it unconsciously. "I came here for food, but I saw them in the Discord chat. I recognized the scam pattern, and I heard you say you knew something was wrong but couldn't prove it." She gestured toward her laptop. "I can prove it." The word scam hung in the air like smoke from a gunshot. Sultan's entire posture had changed. The phone in his hand was forgotten. His pattern recognition, which had been sending unclear signals all night, suddenly blazed with clarity. This child, this impossible, unlikely, hungry child, had just said the thing his instincts had been screaming. David stepped forward, his smile reconstructed but fragile. "Sir, this is clearly some kind of prank or—" "Show me," Sultan said to Maya, ignoring David completely. "You have 3 minutes?" Maya's hands moved across her keyboard. She pulled up her GitHub scanner, entered the smart contract address the founders had been promoting, and pressed execute. Lines of code scrolled across the screen, and the truth, sharp and undeniable, began to reveal itself. The scanner's output filled Maya's cracked screen with red flags that looked like warning labels on a bottle of poison. Marcus laughed first. A sharp, performative sound designed to break tension. "Sir, with all respect, this is a child with a laptop. We have Chertic audits, block secure verification, exchange partnerships with—" "The contract address?" Maya interrupted, her voice quiet but firm. She pointed at the screen. "This is the one you posted in your Discord 4 hours ago. W07 Francebu UE." David's smile flickered. That was the correct address. Maya continued, switching between English and Arabic so Sultan would understand every technical detail. First problem: the source code isn't verified on Etherscan. That means nobody can see what the smart contract actually does. Legitimate projects verify their code immediately. Scammers keep it hidden. She pulled up Etherscan on a second window. The contract showed unverified in gray text. Ibrahim leaned forward, his iPad forgotten. Why would you not verify the source code? Because, Maya said, her fingers flying across the keyboard, if people could read it, they'd see this. She pulled up a decompiled version she'd analyzed earlier, highlighted a specific function in yellow. This is the mint function. See this line? Only owner with no cap restriction. That means whoever controls the owner address can create unlimited tokens whenever they want. They could mint 10 billion tokens after you invest $800 million and crash the price to zero in seconds. Sultan's jaw tightened. His hands, which had been still on the table, now pressed flat against the glass. Marcus stepped forward, his British accent sharp with condescension. Young lady, every DeFi protocol has an owner function for governance, and not like this. Maya pulled up 3 other contracts on split screen. Uniswap, Avi, Compound. See? These have mint caps, time locks, multi-signature requirements. Your contract has none of that, just one address with unlimited power. She zoomed in on the owner address. And this address was created 6 days ago. 0 transaction history before your token. That's not a governance multisig. That's a fresh wallet created specifically to rug pull. The room's temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. David tried to salvage the situation. The multisig is managed by our team using best practices for... It's not a multisig. Maya's voice cut through his explanation like wire through butter. She pulled up the Blockchain Explorer. A real multisig requires multiple signatures to execute transactions. This is a single externally owned account. One person controls everything. She pointed at the screen. Look at the contract. No multisig implementation, no threshold requirements, no signer addresses, just one wallet that can do anything it wants. Ibrahim was typing rapidly on his iPad now, verifying everything Maya said. His face had gone pale. Sultan's voice was quiet. Dangerous? Show me the liquidity lock? Maya nodded. She pulled up the transaction that supposedly locked liquidity. They said the liquidity is locked for 12 months to protect investors. But look at the destination address. The wallet appeared on screen. 0xDF. Created 6 days ago. 0 incoming transactions before the supposed liquidity lock. 0 outgoing transactions after. This wallet was created the same day as the owner address. Same entity. They locked liquidity by sending it to themselves. They can move it anytime they want. Marcus was sweating now. The air conditioning couldn't keep up with the heat of exposure. And the audit letter? Sultan asked. Maya pulled up the PDF the founders had included in their deck. Block secure, professional logo, official sounding language. She opened a browser and searched for Block Secure Crypto Audit Firm. Nothing. She searched for Block Secure LLC Registered Business. Nothing. She pulled up legitimate audit registries, Certic's official list of audits, Consensus Diligence's public database, Trail of Bits. Portfolio. No Block Secure anywhere. The company doesn't exist, Maya said simply. And the Certic logo they used? That's trademark infringement. Real Certic audits have unique report numbers and cryptographic signatures. This is just a logo copy-pasted into a PDF. David's face had transformed from Silicon Valley confidence into something harder to mask. Panic, anger, calculation about whether to fight or flee. This is absurd, he said, his voice rising. We have exchange partnerships, Binance, Coinbase. We've been in talks for months. Maya pulled up her phone, an old iPhone 7 with a cracked screen held together with tape. She opened Twitter and navigated to Binance's official listing requirements page. Binance requires verified smart contracts, public team documentation, and security audits from recognized firms. You have none of those. She looked at Sultan. With your permission, I can tweet at their compliance team right now and ask if this token is scheduled for listing. Do it, Sultan said. Maya typed out a tweet, polite, professional. Hi, Abe and Ants. Can you confirm if token contract YAR 007A3F9B2 is scheduled for listing? Seeing conflicting information? Thanks. She hit send. The room waited in silence. 47 seconds later, her phone buzzed. An official reply from Binance's compliance account. No listing scheduled for this contract. Please be cautious of projects claiming unauthorized partnerships. Marcus stood abruptly. We don't need to sit here and be interrogated by a child with sit down. Sultan's voice carried the weight of decades of command. Men with armies sat down when he used that tone. Marcus sat. Maya continued, her momentum building as the truth poured out through her cracked screen. The dashboard they showed you, the one with all the buy orders and community activity? Watch this. She pulled up the founder's laptop that they'd left on the table. Without asking permission, she accessed the developer console on their live dashboard. Lines of JavaScript appeared, hard-coded numbers, simulated order books, fake user testimonials pulled from a JSON file. This isn't connected to any blockchain, Maya explained. It's a locally hosted web page designed to look like trading activity. See these values? They're random numbers generated every 3 seconds to simulate volatility. None of this is real. Ibrahim had stopped taking notes. He was staring at Maya like she'd just performed surgery on a patient everyone else had pronounced dead. How do you know all this? He asked quietly. Maya's stomach cramped again. She pressed her hand against it. I taught myself. MIT OpenCourseWare, YouTube tutorials. I've been studying crypto scams for 8 months because... She paused. Because I wanted to understand how people lose everything. Sultan stood. He walked to the window overlooking Biscayne Bay. His Gulf Stream was out there somewhere, parked at the private terminal. His $250,000 marble bathtub waited in his penthouse suite. His $2.8 billion fund sat in Abu Dhabi, representing thousands of investors who trusted his judgment. He'd been 2 minutes away from wiring $800 million to thieves. Show me what would happen, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. If I had sent the money. Maya pulled up a testnet environment. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with the precision of someone who'd practiced this scenario dozens of times. I'll simulate it. Same contract structure, same functions. Watch. She deployed a test version of the scam contract, minted tokens, created a fake liquidity pool, simulated Sultan's $800 million investment as test ETH. Then she executed the rug pull, 3 transactions, 15 seconds total. Transaction 1, owner mints 10 billion new tokens, diluting all existing holders. Transaction 2, owner removes all liquidity from the pool. Transaction 3, owner transfers funds to a mixer service. The simulation showed Sultan's $800 million reduced to $0,043 in token value. The room was silent except for the hum of air conditioning and the distant sounds of Miami nightlife. Maya looked up from her screen. Her blue eyes met Sultan's dark ones. A product that can't prove where its money will live isn't a product, she said quietly. It's a promise someone else will have to pay for. The words hung in the air. Quotable, true, devastating. David broke first. He stood, grabbed his laptop, and headed for the door. We don't have to listen to this. We have other investors who... You're not leaving, Sultan said. His security guards moved to block the door, their presence suddenly less decorative, more functional. Ibrahim, Sultan continued, call the FBI, wire fraud, securities fraud, whatever applies. Marcus tried one last time. Sir, this is a misunderstanding. If you'll just let us explain... Explain to the FBI, Sultan said. He turned to Maya. You. Come with me. He walked toward the balcony door. Maya hesitated for only a moment, then followed. Behind them, Ibrahim was already on the phone, speaking in rapid English to someone at the Miami field office. The founders sat frozen, their carefully constructed scheme collapsing around them like a house made of smoke. Sultan opened the balcony door. Night air rushed in, carrying the scent of ocean and jasmine and expensive cologne from the street below. After you, he said to the 10-year-old girl who had just saved him $800 million. The balcony overlooked Biscayne Bay from 20 feet above the street. Below, Miami pulsed with its particular brand of excess. Lamborghinis, clubs with lines around the block, people spending money they had and money they didn't have with equal enthusiasm. Sultan stood at the railing, his kandura catching the breeze. Maya stood beside him, her worn jacket inadequate against the wind, but her posture straight, unbowed. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "Why did you come in?" Sultan finally asked. His voice was quiet now, the authority stripped away, leaving only genuine curiosity. Maya looked down at the street, at the world she knew intimately. "I eat here sometimes," she said. "The kitchen staff. They're kind to me. I was waiting for leftovers when I saw the Discord chat about your meeting." "And you decided to intervene." It wasn't a question. "I recognized the pattern. I've studied dozens of rug pulls. This one was textbook." She paused. "I heard you through the door. You said you knew something was wrong but couldn't prove it. I could prove it." Sultan turned to look at her. Really look at her. The worn clothes, the cracked laptop she still held, the way she kept pressing her hand against her stomach. "When did you last eat?" he asked. 2 days ago. A sandwich someone left on a bench?" The answer was matter-of-fact, no self-pity, just data. Sultan felt something crack in his chest. He'd spent the evening in a room worth millions, surrounded by luxury that couldn't solve his problem. And this child, who hadn't eaten in 2 days, had walked into danger to save him from his own educated blindness. "What do you want?" he asked. The question hung between them. He expected her to ask for money, food, a home, the things any rational homeless child would want. Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke, and her answer revealed depths he hadn't anticipated. "Not the $800 million you almost lost," she said, "but I want 3 things." Sultan waited. "First," Maya continued, "I want the restaurant to let community kids use the back room for free coding nights, 2 nights a week. No questions asked about their circumstances, just access to space and Wi-Fi." Sultan blinked. Of all the things he'd expected, community coding nights weren't on the list. "Second, I want $150,000 to host a secure server and domain so my scanner can be public and hardened. Right now, it's just a GitHub repo. But with proper infrastructure, it could scan thousands of contracts daily and warn people before they invest in scams." She shifted her laptop to her other hand. "Third, I want your fund to match up to $1 million in micro grants for young people who want to audit smart contracts and build security tools, not scholarships to fancy schools, direct funding for projects that actually protect people." Sultan found himself impressed despite everything. "Those are very specific requests." "I've been thinking about them for months," Maya admitted. "I just never thought I'd have the chance to actually ask for them." "Is that all?" Sultan asked. Maya met his eyes. "No, I want a seat at the table." "What table?" "The table where decisions get made about who gets the grants, what projects get funded, how the security tools are developed." Her voice was steady. "I don't want charity. I want governance. I want to be part of deciding how these resources are used." Sultan laughed, not mockery, genuine amazement. "You want control." "I want partnership," Maya corrected. "You have resources and connections I don't have. I have insights and street-level understanding you don't have. Together, we could build something that actually prevents the next $800 million scam." The balcony door opened behind them. Ibrahim stepped out, his phone still in his hand. "FBI is sending agents. They want the founders detained. They're also very interested in talking to—" He looked at Maya, the young woman who identified the fraud. Sultan nodded. "Give us a few more minutes." Ibrahim retreated back inside. Sultan turned back to the railing, processing what Maya had proposed. He'd built his fortune by recognizing undervalued assets and investing before others saw their potential. Real estate in Dubai when it was still desert, renewable energy before it was profitable, algorithmic trading when it was still experimental, but he'd never encountered an asset quite like this. A 10-year-old homeless girl with technical skills that surpassed his paid experts and strategic thinking that challenged his own. "Let me ask you something," he said. "Why do you care about other kids getting access to coding education?" You could ask for things that benefit you directly? Maya was quiet for a moment. Because I got lucky, she finally said. I found free MIT courses online. I figured out how to access library computers. I stumbled onto forums where people explained blockchain security. But how many kids like me never find those resources? How many brilliant minds are we losing because they're too busy surviving to learn? She looked out at the Miami skyline. Your $800 million would have bought headlines for those scammers. My plan buys resilience. It creates infrastructure that helps people protect themselves. It finds kids who see patterns others miss and gives them tools to do something about it. Sultan was silent. He was thinking about his sons, who'd grown up with every advantage: private schools, tutors, access to his network of billionaires and decision makers. They were smart kids, capable. But had they ever demonstrated the kind of creative problem solving this homeless child had shown in the last hour? You said you want governance, not charity, he said. What's the difference to you? Charity is you giving me things and feeling good about yourself, Maya said bluntly. Governance is you respecting that I have insights worth listening to, that my experience surviving the system's failures makes me qualified to help redesign it. Sultan found himself nodding. You're 10 years old. I'm also the person who just saved you $800 million using skills I taught myself in public libraries. Maya's voice carried no arrogance, just fact. Age doesn't determine capability, circumstances do, and my circumstances have taught me things your Harvard-educated advisors will never understand. The statement was so confident, so completely accurate, that Sultan couldn't help but smile. All right, he said, let's talk specifics. The restaurant's back room, that's easy. I know the owner. I'll make it happen, the server. The infrastructure, $150,000. We can set that up through my technology fund. With me maintaining administrative access, Maya interjected, not just as a user? Sultan nodded. With you maintaining administrative access, the microgrants, $1 million matched funding over 2 years, that can be structured through my existing fund with you on the decision committee. Not on the committee, Maya said, co-chairing it. Sultan raised an eyebrow. You want equal authority with my investment team? I want the kids we're trying to help to have a voice in who gets funded and how, Maya said. Your team understands finance. I understand the kids. We need both perspectives. Sultan extended his hand. Deal, but I have one condition. Maya looked at his outstretched hand but didn't take it yet. What condition? Independent verification of your scanner by a legitimate security firm, not Block Secure, he added with a slight smile. A real one, Chertik, trail of bits, someone with actual credibility. I welcome that, Maya said. I want to know if there are flaws I missed. She took his hand. Her grip was firm despite her small size. They shook on an agreement that would redirect $1.15 million toward a vision that had been born in library computers and refined through 11 months of homelessness. When the FBI talks to you, Sultan said, tell them everything you told me. They'll want your scanner as evidence. They might want you to testify if this goes to trial. Maya nodded. I can do that. And Maya, Sultan added, his voice softer now, after the FBI is done, my security team is taking you to a hotel, real food, real bed. Tomorrow we'll figure out longer-term arrangements, but tonight you're not sleeping on the street. For the first time since entering the room, Maya's composure cracked. Her eyes filled with tears she didn't let fall. Why are you doing this? Sultan looked at her. At this impossible child who demonstrated more integrity and intelligence in 1 hour than most people showed in a lifetime? Because you asked for a seat at the table, not a handout, he said. Because you proved that intelligence exists in places I'd stopped looking. And because, he paused, choosing his words carefully. Because I've spent 30 years investing in potential. You're the highest return opportunity I've ever encountered. Maya wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I won't let you down. I know, Sultan said. That's why this isn't charity. It's recognition of value that already exists. Behind them, through the balcony window, the FBI was arriving. The founders were being read their rights. Ibrahim was coordinating with lawyers who would spend months unraveling the full scope of the attempted fraud. But on the balcony, something else was being built. Not a rescue story, not a charity case, a partnership between someone who had resources and someone who had insights, between someone who understood systems from the top and someone who understood them from the bottom. The kind of partnership that didn't just prevent one scam, the kind that could redesign how an entire industry thought about security, accessibility, and the distribution of opportunity. Sultan looked down at the Miami streets where Maya had been surviving for 11 months. "You know what I've learned tonight?" he asked. "What?" "That my $65 million Gulfstream and my Harvard advisors couldn't solve a problem a homeless 10-year-old solved in 5 minutes. He smiled. "That's not a failure of resources. That's a failure of perspective." Maya smiled back, a real smile this time. "Your perspective is about to change a lot." "Good," Sultan said. "I'm ready." They walked back inside together, the billionaire and the homeless girl, about to sign papers that would transform both their futures and create infrastructure that would protect thousands of others from losing everything to sophisticated lies. Ibrahim met them with a tablet. "I've drafted the letter of intent. Simple terms, $150,000 for infrastructure, $1 million matched funding, decision-making authority shared between Sultan's fund and Maya's oversight." Maya read through it carefully, slowly. She'd taught herself to read contracts during her library hours, studying legal language in forums where people discussed DAO governance and decentralized finance. "This says advisory role," she pointed out. "That's not the same as co-chair." Ibrahim looked at Sultan, who nodded. "Change it to co-chair," Sultan said. "She's right. Words matter in contracts." Ibrahim made the edit. Maya read it again, nodded. Sultan signed first, then handed the stylus to Maya. Her signature was small but clear. Maya Carter, 10 years old, homeless, brilliant, about to change an industry. The FBI agents were waiting to talk to her. The night was far from over, but something had shifted in the universe's accounting. A girl who had asked for governance instead of charity had just proved why that distinction mattered. 2 years later, Maya Carter stood in a conference room at the Securities and Exchange Commission's Miami regional office. She was 12 now, taller, her clothes fit properly. Her laptop was new, though she still kept the cracked MacBook Air in her backpack like a talisman. But the biggest change wasn't physical, it was the way adults looked at her. They listened. The room held 47 people, SEC commissioners, FBI cybercrime specialists, representatives from Binance, Coinbase, and Kraken, state-level financial regulators, and a handful of crypto founders who'd been subpoenaed to explain why their projects kept getting flagged by a scanner built by a homeless kid. Maya stood at the podium, a presentation remote in her hand. Behind her, a screen displayed numbers that told a story about what happened when you gave resources to people who understood systems from the bottom up. "The payback scanner has been operational for 23 months, Maya began. Her voice was steady, professional. "In that time, it has flagged 1,842 suspicious token launches across Ethereum, Binance Smart Chain, Polygon, and Solana networks." She clicked to the next slide. A map lit up with red dots representing blocked scams. The dots clustered in Miami, New York, London, Singapore, Dubai. Everywhere money flowed digitally, fraud followed. "We estimate these flags prevented $847 million in attempted fraud, not by stopping the scams from launching. We can't do that, but by warning investors before they committed capital to projects with obvious red flags." An SEC commissioner raised his hand. "How do you verify that $847 million figure?" Maya clicked to another slide. "We track wallets that attempted to invest in flagged projects based on pre-sale participation lists we obtained through legal discovery in fraud cases. We cross-reference those wallets with transaction data showing they pulled out after our warnings. Conservative estimate of prevented losses based on average intended investment sizes?" The commissioner nodded, satisfied. Maya continued, "But the scanner is only part of the infrastructure. The micro-grant program has funded 320 young auditors across 18 countries. These aren't traditional security researchers. They're kids like me, foster care, homeless, juvenile detention, kids who learned to spot deception because their survival depended on it. She pulled up profiles. Marcus from Detroit, age 14, former foster care, built a tool that detects fake trading volume by analyzing on-chain activity patterns. His work led to the delisting of 23 tokens from major exchanges. Aisha from London, age 13, asylum seeker from Somalia, created an algorithm that identifies related wallet clusters used in coordinated pump and dump schemes. Her research contributed to 3 criminal prosecutions. James from San Francisco, age 15, homeless for 2 years, developed a machine learning model that predicts rug pull likelihood with 89% accuracy based on team communication patterns and code quality metrics. The room was silent. These weren't feel-good stories about kids being given opportunities. These were case studies in untapped intelligence that, traditional systems had completely missed. These young people aren't just learning security auditing, Maya said. They're better at it than most adults with computer science degrees. Want to know why? She didn't wait for an answer. Because they understand how scammers think. They've been lied to by systems their entire lives. Foster care that promised stability but delivered abuse. Schools that promised education but just warehoused them. Social workers who promised help but just checked boxes. They recognize sophisticated manipulation because they've survived it. An FBI agent leaned forward. Are you saying traditional security education is inadequate? I'm saying it's incomplete, Maya replied. Technical skills matter, but pattern recognition, understanding of human psychology, and ability to spot inconsistencies in sophisticated presentations, those skills come from lived experience that can't be taught in a classroom. She clicked to the next slide. And that's why we've created a parallel education track. Free Solidity courses designed for people with no formal computer science background, vulnerability assessment training that focuses on practical pattern recognition rather than academic theory, and most importantly, a youth governance board that makes decisions about what projects get audited and how resources are allocated. Sultan sat in the back of the room, watching with quiet pride as the girl he'd met on a restaurant balcony commanded the attention of people who regulated trillions of dollars. His investment portfolio had changed too. After Maya's intervention, he'd redirected $10 million from corporate compliance budgets into community-based security auditing. His fund now required every blockchain investment to undergo review by the Youth Auditing Network before committing capital. The returns had been extraordinary, not just financially, though avoiding $800 million in fraud certainly helped, but in terms of deal quality, the young auditors caught things traditional due diligence missed, code vulnerabilities, team dynamics that suggested internal conflicts, marketing claims that didn't match technical capabilities. They were better investigators because they'd learned to trust nothing and verify everything. Maya advanced to a slide showing the infrastructure they'd built. The scanner now runs 24/7 on servers in 3 countries. It's completely free, no registration required. Anyone can paste a contract address and get an instant security assessment. We've processed 847,000 scans in the last year. Who pays for this? Someone asked. Sultan al-Najjar's initial investment created an endowment, Maya explained. The server costs are roughly $8,000 monthly. We've also received donations from exchanges that benefit from our fraud prevention. Coinbase contributed $200,000 last quarter. Binance matched it. She looked directly at the exchange representatives in the room. Because here's what we've proven. Preventing scams is cheaper than dealing with them after they happen. Every dollar spent on early detection saves at least $10 in customer losses, regulatory fines, and reputation damage. The Binance representative nodded. They'd run their own analysis. Maya's numbers were conservative, if anything. The founders from that night in Miami, an SEC commissioner asked. Marcus Webb and David Chen? What happened to them? Maya's expression hardened slightly. They never launched their token after verification cascades from multiple exchanges. Nobody would list them. The FBI prosecuted them for wire fraud and securities violations. They're serving 7 and 9 years respectively in federal prison. And the $800 million that almost disappeared? Another regulator asked. Stayed in the economy, Maya said simply. Sultan invested it in legitimate renewable energy projects instead. Those investments created 2,400 jobs and generated actual returns, not promises, actual value. She paused, looking around the room at faces that represented institutional power. Which brings me to the real reason I'm here today. Not to report on what we've accomplished, but to challenge how you think about where security expertise comes from. The room's energy shifted. This wasn't just a presentation anymore, it was a confrontation. Give tools to people who live at the edges, Maya said, her voice carrying the weight of lived experience, and they will show you where the light doesn't reach. Every regulatory framework you've built assumes expertise looks like credentials and comes from institutions. But some of the best investigators I know never finished high school. Some of the sharpest pattern recognizers I work with learned their skills in homeless shelters. She clicked to her final slide. A quote in simple text. A small voice in perfect Arabic cutting through opulence became a line quoted in panels, but the work that followed rewired an industry. 2 years ago, I walked into a restaurant looking for food, Maya said. I walked out with a partnership, not because someone felt sorry for me, because I had skills that were valuable, skills that had been invisible to every system designed to identify talent. She looked directly at Sultan, then back at the room. How many more kids like me are out there right now? Brilliant, hungry, invisible, not because they lack ability, but because they lack access. Not because they can't learn, but because nobody's looking for intelligence in the places where they exist. The SEC commissioner who'd asked the first question spoke up. What do you want from us? Regulatory changes? Funding mandates? I want you to stop measuring expertise by credentials and start measuring it by results, Maya said. Hire young auditors from our program, fund security research that comes from unconventional backgrounds, create pathways for intelligence that doesn't fit your traditional molds. She closed her laptop. The presentation was over, but the message was just beginning. Because the next $800 million fraud is being designed right now, and the person most likely to catch it might be a 14-year-old living in a car, teaching themselves blockchain security on library Wi-Fi. If you're not looking for them, you're going to miss them. And when that fraud succeeds, you'll spend years wondering why your traditional systems failed to detect it. The room erupted in questions, requests for partnerships, offers of funding. But Maya had said what she came to say. She'd proven that intelligence existed everywhere. Society just needed to learn how to see it. The Payback Scanner Foundation now operated in 5 cities: Miami, New York, Los Angeles, London, Dubai. Each location had a community center where kids could access computers, learn coding, and most importantly, be seen by adults who understood that brilliance didn't require permission slips or perfect attendance records. The foundation's impact couldn't be measured just in scams prevented or dollars saved. It had to be measured in systems changed. Exchanges now required community audits before listing new tokens. Universities had started recruiting from the foundation's youth program, recognizing that street-smart intelligence combined with technical training created investigators traditional education couldn't match. And venture capital firms had begun consulting the Youth Governance Board before making blockchain investments because 14-year-olds who'd survived homelessness could spot bullshit that Harvard MBAs missed. But the real victory wasn't institutional adoption. It was philosophical transformation. The idea that intelligence only existed in expected places had been challenged, not with theory or good intentions, but with measurable results that proved overlooked kids could outperform credentialed experts when given proper resources and respect. Sultan's $800 million, which had almost disappeared into a scam, had instead generated real returns in renewable energy projects. That money had built solar farms, created jobs, and produced clean electricity. Not because Sultan was a genius investor, but because a homeless girl had stopped him from making the worst decision of his career. The lesson was simple but revolutionary. Listen to voices from places you'd normally ignore. Maya Carter changed the world because one person recognized her value instead of just seeing her circumstances. That recognition created infrastructure that helped 320 other young people develop their gifts. Those 320 created tools that protected millions of dollars and educated thousands of investors. The ripple effects were incalculable, but Here's the truth that matters more than any numbers. Right now, in your community, there's another Maya, a kid with pattern recognition abilities that would shame AI algorithms, a teenager who understands systems better than people with PhDs, a young person whose intelligence has been shaped by survival in ways traditional education could never replicate. They're sitting in libraries, learning from free online courses. They're in foster homes, teaching themselves skills nobody bothered to show them. They're in detention centers where society has decided their problems to be managed rather than minds to be developed. And they're invisible, not because they lack brilliance, but because you're not looking for it in the places where they exist. Cryptocurrency scams won't stop themselves. Every day, new fraud schemes target people desperate for financial security. Traditional regulation can't keep up. Law enforcement catches scammers after the damage is done. And exchange compliance teams, no matter how sophisticated, miss patterns that seem obvious in retrospect. Young coders from unconventional backgrounds are the first line of defense, not because they're charity cases or feel-good stories, but because their survival has taught them to spot manipulation that looks legitimate to everyone else. They understand that real security doesn't come from expensive tools or impressive credentials. It comes from pattern recognition forged in environments where trust is earned, not assumed. The work Maya started isn't finished. It's barely begun. Every week, kids age out of foster care with no support. Teenagers in homeless shelters teach themselves coding on phones with cracked screens. Young people in detention centers solve problems nobody asked them to solve, developing skills nobody recognizes as valuable. That's wasted potential on a scale that should make society ashamed. But shame doesn't change systems. Action does. Share Maya's story, not because it's inspiring, though it is. Share it because it proves a point that needs proving. Intelligence exists everywhere. Society has just been looking in the wrong places. When you encounter a young person from difficult circumstances, ask yourself, what have they learned that textbooks don't teach? What patterns can they see that I've been trained to miss? What problems could they solve if someone just gave them access and respect instead of pity and charity? Demand better from institutions that claim to develop talent. Push your local schools to recognize different types of brilliance. Ask tech companies why their security teams all look the same and come from the same universities. Challenge venture capital firms to explain why they're not consulting young people who've survived the system's older investors just study from distance. Because somewhere in your city tonight, there's a kid who could prevent the next $800 million fraud. They're brilliant. They're resourceful. They're learning skills that could protect millions of people. And they're invisible. They're waiting for someone to see them, someone to believe in them, someone like you. 2 years ago, Sultan al-Najjar almost wired $800 million to scammers because he trusted impressive presentations over inconvenient truths. Maya Carter stopped him by recognizing patterns she'd learned to see through survival. That moment froze a room, but the work that followed rewired an industry. "It's a scam," she'd said in perfect Arabic. 2 words that challenged assumptions about where wisdom comes from and who deserves to be heard. The phrase became famous, quoted in regulatory panels, referenced in academic papers, turned into a meme in crypto communities. But the phrase isn't what matters. What matters is that after those 2 words, Sultan listened. He didn't dismiss her because of her age or circumstances. He didn't treat her like a charity case or a feel-good story. He recognized that she had value, offered partnership instead of pity, and created infrastructure that amplified her impact. That's the model. That's what changes systems. Not random acts of kindness, systematic recognition of value that already exists. The next $800 million fraud might be stopped by a kid you overlooked today. The solution to problems your organization can't solve might be sitting in a detention center, teaching themselves skills nobody asked them to learn. Intelligence isn't rare. It's just been invisible to people who decided what smart looks like based on their own limited experiences. Maya proved something that shouldn't need proving, but clearly does. Brilliance exists everywhere. Not just in places where people expect to find it. Don't let the next Maya remain invisible. Don't let the next billion-dollar fraud succeed because you weren't looking for intelligence in unconventional places. Share this story now. Look differently at young people from difficult circumstances. Demand that your institutions value street-smart intelligence as much as academic credentials. Because the kid you dismiss today might be the one who saves you tomorrow. If you just bother to listen,